Hey YouTube, hey, I'm working today on my mother's 2006 Buick Lacrosse. I'll give you a quick overview of what's led to the disaster you see in front of you here. We had a water leak. She reported water was filling up the passenger side floor. So started taking a look at that for her. That's a serious problem, especially when you're like my mom and the car sits and it mildews, which is what we had inside, something we had to fix. The car has a sunroof, and many times these water leaks are one of two things: either the sunroof or the AC condensate drain. My first inspection was up here at the sunroof, and on these sunroofs you generally will have a drain at each corner. In the right front corner, sure enough, here I found a lot of gooey kind of debris, which happens when these don't drain very well, like when it's draining slowly. And I've already cleaned some of that out, so I can't show it to you, but I wanted to try to show if I can get some light in here, where the drain is. It's way up there in the corner. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it very well or not, but basically this zip tie is stuck in it. That's where it is. So if you follow instructions on the internet, you can try various techniques for clearing this: blowing air in there, sticking trimmed weed trimmer line down in there, going back and forth. On this car, that didn't work. It would go down about 3 feet and get stuck. Okay? So, the way I approached the problem: one, the Buick padding under the carpet completely saturated, and since GM has these channels that run under the frame member here, it let water go not only on the front footwell but all the way back to the trunk padding. So the whole floor on this side was wet. Only way I could see to really address that properly was to take the carpeting out. And that means you take out all the plastic trim around the doors, you take the center console out, you take the seats out, and then you can lift the carpeting. So that was step one. And then I got in here with towels and dried out the floor really well, cleaned the mildew off the vinyl, and that's where we are. We're in better shape than we were. Okay, so how did I test this to verify something was wrong with the drain? I went over to the driver's side over here, and I took a bottle of water and I poured it in the drain. Sure enough, it came running out the bottom of the car. So far, so good. Came over here to this side, and I poured about half a bottle of water in. I noticed nothing was coming out the bottom of the car. It was going somewhere else. Okay, bad sign. So, after some investigation of how this drain works on this car, and generally they'll go from the drain hole under the headliner down the A-pillar, and then from that point all bets are off. You know, different cars have different routings to get those tubes out of there. On this car, what they did was, as it turns out, is they routed it down into the kick panel area here. Hope I'm getting a good enough shot of this for you to see. And here's the tube right here. And if you notice, the tube ends here. So, as best I can tell, the design of this thing is, and I'm trying to get some light in here so you can see, it's about room to get a hand in there, and that's about it. It looks like the design for this thing was the water comes down the tube, it drips into this pocket here behind the kick panel, and then there is a drain in the bottom of that that lets the water out of the car. So this serves, I guess you could call it a little reservoir, or drain catch basin or something. And the problem was, when I looked up in here, took this padding off and different pieces of insulation so I could get in there, inside here was full of water, sure enough. So the drain in this kick panel basically got clogged. It filled up to the top, started running out here into the car, and that's how the floor got got saturated. Okay, so how are we going to fix that? Well, first thing, I tried to figure out how this thing drains in here. And as you can see, you know, there's not much room to get in there and work. But I finally figured out that the drain is up in the very front of this. And I think I've got enough light now so you can see a picture. I've got a piece of wire stuck in there, and that's where the water's supposed to go out. Unfortunately, in this one, there was a whole bunch of expanding foam insulation up there in the front too, and I guess the combination of that stuff deteriorating over time and, you know, goo from the drain, debris, clogged it up. So I'm doing two things here to correct this. Number one, and it took me a while to figure out exactly where the thing drained. I went all around in there with that piece of wire and probes and trying to figure out where the drain was, how it drained. It's not a hole, it's just a narrow space between two pieces of sheet metal, and that's commonly done on cars these days. They will just, a drain will actually be like two pieces of sheet metal that come up next to each other, but they're not welded. You know, can be very narrow openings. So anyway, I got in there with a scraper as best I could, scraped out all of that excess foam insulation, managed to get the wire down in there, and now that drain is clear. So I could quit there, but I'm not going to, because I don't like the design, and I decided that I want this tube to go outside the car. And the way that I did that, after looking at several different options, is I will show you here. Need to get out and move around. Grab our light. Sorry this is hard to show, but the accessibility in this area is not good. Okay. So now we're into the right front fender area. You can take out a few 8mm screws and the fender liner comes loose really easily. You don't have to take the whole thing loose. You can just let the front of it stay fastened to move the back out of the way. And so get that out of the way. There's some felt in here you could move out of the way. And here's my solution right here. I drilled a hole. That's a 7/16 hole. If you wanted to duplicate this, by the way, I can tell you that it is from the bottom of this piece of molding here up to the center of the hole is 10 3/8. And it also aligns, it's slightly below the upper bolt for the door hinge here. Okay, so it gives you an idea of where this bolt is. There's also a couple of spot wells you can use to kind of reference this, and you can see these spot wells on the inside too. But anyway, after some calculation and tribulations, I drilled a 3/16 pilot hole, then a 7/16 hole, and then, you know, I held the drill and kind of pulled it down like this while it was running to chamfer the hole on the top and bottom, so that when the tube comes out here, it won't have a sharp edge. And I've set the hole at this height because I've already test fit this. There is enough tube for the tube to actually come out here. So this is, you know, this is my solution for what it's worth. Take it or leave it. But this is what I'm doing, is I'm bringing the tube directly out here. It's going to be well protected behind the fender liner here. There's nothing there, and the water is just going to run down here and out like all the other water that gets, you know, back in this area where the door opening is. Does the same thing, runs down here and out. So drill the hole. I put some zinc chromate primer on it because we don't want rust there. Really good stuff, by the way. It's part number 7222 in the Martin Senauer line at Napa. So you can go to Napa, get that stuff. They may have to order it if a lot of them don't stock it. But make sure they look up part number 7222 in Martin Senauer, and they'll find that really good primer for you. So I primed it on the outside. I did the same thing on the inside with primer, and now the next step is going to be to poke the tube through here.